So, good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where. My name is Jesse Hildebrand, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For those who don't know, we're all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. Today, I'm excited to say we're joined right now by 5 classes from across North and South America, which is really exciting for us. I'm going to go through each of them and give them a chance to do a bit of a shout out. So first, we have Mrs. Rasiga's grade 3 through 6s from Smooth Rock Falls, Ontario. We've got Mr. Pennington's grade 8s from Denton, Maryland. Eclipse excitement. We've got Mr. Janty's grade 3s from Palo Alto, California. Very high pitched, I like it. And then we've got Mrs. Hastings Specs, grade 6 through 8 from Brampton, Ontario. Everyone's excited. 2 more classes might be joining us a little later. The Buenos Aires class has dropped out, so hopefully they come back in soon. There they are. All right, so of course the reason you guys are all here today is for our speaker. We're joined by David Makepeace, who gets the amazing role of getting to travel around the world chasing eclipses. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to him to tell us how he got into that, some neat things from his adventures, and a little bit more. Thank you so much for joining us today, David.
My pleasure. I'm very glad to be here. I just want to say a welcome to all the classrooms around the world that are watching this right now. I also want to give a shout out to everybody who's following us on YouTube right now, both in this time space right now and into the future. So we're going to be talking a little bit about solar eclipses today for a number of reasons. Mostly a total eclipse of the sun. That's the focus of the talk today for 2 reasons. It's a thing that I've seen the most in my life. I've traveled all over the world for the last 25 or 26 years to see total eclipses of the sun. That's the thing that I love the most. A very exciting event. The other reason is that there is a total eclipse of the sun coming right through the middle of America this August, and it's shaping up to be a really big event. It's been many, many decades since a total eclipse of the sun was visible right across America. And with the amount of people that are living right through the center of North America now, this could be the most observed total eclipse in all of history. And that's a pretty exciting event. Those of us who are in the eclipse chasing world have been preparing for this for many, many years. Most of the time, we have to travel to great distances to places around the world like Turkey or Libya or Zambia or Australia or even South America if we want to see a total eclipse. It's very rare in our lives that a total eclipse of the sun comes so close to where so many North Americans are living. And hopefully you'll have the opportunity to come and see this total eclipse before too long, because it's coming in August, so plans need to be made. So what are we talking about when we're talking about a total eclipse? I've got a bunch of great visuals that I want to share with you guys today to give you a sense of what it is that we're talking about when it comes to a total eclipse. So here's a great animation that shows you what the basic function is. Here's the sun, and look, here comes the moon. This is the beginning of a total eclipse of the sun. So what you have here is the moon moving in across the face of the sun, and you can see the alignment is perfect. So I'm just going to stop this and show you. As the moon moves across the sun, it blocks the sun more and more and more and more and more, right down to a tiny little point. At this phase of the eclipse, the sun is still visible. And we're filming this with special filters so that you can aim the camera directly at the sun. If you were looking at this phase of a total eclipse now with the sun still visible, you would have to wear special glasses to protect your eyes, because you can't look at the sun on any day. And it's true, you can't look at the sun even when you're watching the moon cross it. So I'm just going to back this up and show that during the alignment of the sun and the moon and the earth is the only time when you can get a total eclipse. So this is an animation. It takes an hour, maybe a little bit more than an hour, for the moon to move across the sun and create a total eclipse where the moon completely blocks out the sun. There's the last moment of the sun, and now this is what a total eclipse looks like. You've got the black disk of the moon directly in front of the sun, and if I speed this up a little bit, you can see that the corona, the atmosphere of the sun, comes into view. Now, it's very difficult to film this with a film camera or with a photo camera because the corona is so long and extensive. This atmosphere of the sun that is there every day, it's impossible to see unless you're in a total eclipse of the sun. And this is the thing that eclipse chasers tend to love the most, is actually seeing the corona, which as we open up the iris on this particular photograph, you can see that the corona extends for millions of kilometers out into space from behind the black disk of the moon. To be able to see this yourself with your own eyes while you're standing on the Earth is one of the most incredible experiences that you could have in your life. It's definitely the crowning glory of astronomy in terms of observing astronomy and observing the motion of the solar system. Look at this, the corona, the extent of the corona in this very large exposure. And then a total eclipse of the sun will last for perhaps 2 minutes, perhaps 3, perhaps 4 minutes. And then when the eclipse is coming to an end, the moon starts to move off again. And you'll see that here. Here comes the sun again from behind the moon as the moon starts to move off. And then we put our filters back on. And then you see the moon moving. It is continuing in its orbit. And the total eclipse is over. Now you're back into what they call a partial eclipse as the moon is moving away. And if you were to watch this, you'd need special glasses or special filters on your camera or your telescope so that you can see the partial phases without hurting your eyes. So that's the essence of a total eclipse of the sun. You've got the moon moving directly in front of the sun, and the experience of this is probably one of the greatest things that you can possibly see. And I've been seeing these events for, as I say, over 25 or 26 years. And the thing that I love the most about a total eclipse experience is that it shows me the bigger perspective that we actually live in a solar system. Look at this picture here. Here's the moon directly in front of the sun with the corona, and this is the shadow of the moon that is reaching out of space and touching down onto the Earth. You can see this dark part right here. We're only able to see a total eclipse because we're standing in exactly at the right place at the right time. So the shadow of the moon can fall down onto the Earth. Here's my friends here. This is in Australia in the outback a number of years ago. And I love events that draw my attention to the bigger perspective. This is one of the great things about getting out of the classroom and actually exploring by the seat of your pants. You have to get out of the classroom at a certain point and get your pants dirty. It means that you're getting out there and you're experiencing things for yourself. And the thing with these cosmic events is that they draw, at least for me, they draw my attention to the fact that we are actually living in a solar system. So the total eclipse of the sun draws your attention to the fact that we live in a much bigger environment than just the Earth. And one of the things that has fascinated me over the years that I realize when I see a total eclipse is that, oh my Lord, we actually live in the solar system. We actually live here. If you live for 100 years, you will spin around the sun only 100 times as part of this gigantic system. And it makes me wonder, wow, how did we get here? What are we made of? What is our future going to be? How did we get here in the first place? What is the Earth doing here as part of this system? And when you see a total eclipse, it really draws your perspective to these bigger parts of our solar system, and it raises your attention away from the Earth and out into the cosmos. So I want to show you just a couple of pictures. Eclipse chasers love to take shots of the total eclipse of the sun. They're very difficult events to film, but they can produce some tremendous results. Here we have the moon moving in front of the sun, and the total eclipse is just about to begin. This is called a diamond ring, because it really looks like a diamond ring in the sky. You've got the moon in front of the sun, and the last little bit of sun is about to be extinguished there. That's a tremendous photograph. Here you see the shadow of the moon. See this dark part here? That's the shadow of the moon. And it's being projected off the moon right there and out into space and onto the Earth. And we're standing in the part of the moon's shadow just underneath here that allows us to look down this big shadow and right into the moon, which is lined up with the sun. This was taken in Patagonia in southern Argentina in 2010. Terrific photograph. And here's the close-up. You can just imagine standing there and seeing the moon block out the sun, turning the sun black and revealing the solar corona. The experience of this absolutely has to be experienced in the first person. You have to show up. The photographs don't do it justice. Here's the moon moving off from this eclipse. You can see the diamond ring happening again, and the moon is moving off this way and taking its shadow away. Here's another total eclipse. This was taken on Easter Island in 2010 with the statues looking up at the eclipse. There's the moon in front of the sun right there. Here's a close-up of the corona, this atmosphere of the sun that we've been talking about. This is what eclipse chasers love to see during a total eclipse. You've got these streamers and these brushes shooting out from the surface of the sun and extending for millions of kilometers out into space. This is the crowning glory, or the corona, of the eclipse. And eclipse chasers love to see the shape of the corona, the different wisps, and the shape and the color is different at every eclipse. It's very difficult to predict what this is going to look like. And it's very difficult to try to show what the eclipse feels like in a picture because you're not there. You absolutely have to show up and experience this for yourself. Look at this tremendous photograph of the extent of the corona. It's very hard to take a single picture of the corona, but if you take 8 or 10 or 20 pictures and stack them together, you can build a picture of what the corona looked like to your eye when you saw it in the sky. This corona, the atmosphere of the sun, is extending for millions of kilometers out into space. You can just imagine what a tremendous experience it would be to see that with your own eyes. Now, there's a number of different types of eclipses. We're focusing on the total eclipse of the sun right now, but here's a different type of eclipse. Here's the moon blocking out only part of the sun. That's called a partial eclipse. There's other kinds of solar eclipses as well. This is called an annular eclipse. So here's the moon in front of the sun, but on the day the eclipse took place, the moon was too small to completely cover the sun. So you never got a total eclipse on this day. The moon moved into the sun and it left a ring of sun all the way around. That's called an annular eclipse. Those are really neat to see too, but it doesn't go all dark and you don't see the corona. There's also, of course, eclipses of the moon, which many of us have seen. This is when the full moon moves into the shadow of the Earth and it goes red for a couple of hours. So we're not talking about those. Those are the other different kinds of eclipses. What we're focusing on now is this tremendous event known as the total eclipse of the sun, where you can see the corona extending out from behind the black disk of the moon. So that's, here's the path through America. So the eclipse that will happen August 21st, here's where the path of the shadow of the moon will fall all the way along here. This is another reason why it's such a great time to start talking about solar eclipses now, is that for many people who are living in North America, this is the most accessible total solar eclipse to come in decades. And if you live anywhere in the southern states here, or in the northern part of the US here, or even into Canada, it's a very easy drive to get down into the zone of totality through here and see the total eclipse of the sun. So I like talking about these because this event is right on our doorstep. August is only a few weeks away, and it could be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for many people to come and see this tremendous event. So I want to show you how eclipses happen. We noticed that we were in the solar system before, but eclipses take place because of the action of the moon and the moon blocking out the sun. So I want to show you this really awesome video of how that happens. We need the moon to block out the sun for a total eclipse to take place. But most of the time when the moon is moving in its orbit, it's too far above or too far below the plane of the ecliptic. That's this green plane that you're seeing. That's the space where the sun and the moon and the earth can line up. Points going up or going down on the other side for an alignment between the sun, the moon, and the earth to take place. So without that alignment, no solar eclipse is possible. So it's the moon doing all of the magic during a total eclipse of the sun. And here it comes. Here's the moon moving right in front of the sun. And what does it do? It drops its shadow onto the surface of the earth. And this is the whole magic with a total eclipse of the sun, is that we can predict with great accuracy where the shadow of the moon will fall. And what eclipse chasers are trying to do is stand in the shadow of the moon so that it can block out the sun. So take a look at this tremendous animation with the shadow of the earth and the shadow of the moon. When the alignment is perfect, The moon moves into such a position as its shadow falls directly down onto the surface of the Earth. You need to stand in this tiny little dot of shadow on the surface of the Earth if you want to see the moon blocking out the sun. If you stand outside here or over here or anywhere else, you will not see a total eclipse of the sun. You have to be in this tiny little spot right here as it moves along if you want to see a total eclipse. These are the celestial mechanics of eclipses. And without this perfect alignment, these events would not be visible from Earth. So this is what gets eclipse chasers all excited about seeing a total eclipse of the sun, is that we're chasing this dot, the shadow of the moon, as it races across the Earth. And you could pick any place along the surface of the Earth where we know that the shadow of the moon is going to fall. In fact, it looks like a long path, just like this. And this shows you exactly where you could stand if you wanted to see a total eclipse. And eclipse chasers, we spend a lot of time trying to get to exactly the right place at the right time. So here it is again. The moon's moving in its orbit. It's dragging its shadow across the surface of the Earth so that we can get in the right place at the right time and look up into the sky and see this. That's the moon moving across the surface of the sun, getting ready to completely block it out. Now we can remove the filters. You see the diamond ring effect in the sky. It looks like a diamond ring hanging up in the sky. And then the moon takes out the last little bit of sun, and then a total eclipse begins. The corona comes into view. You see it extending for millions of kilometers out into space. You have this tremendous transformation of the Earth for perhaps 2 minutes, 3 minutes, maybe 4 minutes, and then the moon just keeps moving in its orbit like it does all the time, and then it starts to move away from the sun. We put our filters back on so we can see this, and then the moon slowly starts to disappear, and the partial phase of the eclipse ends. So it's all about this action of the shadow, trying to chase the shadow of the moon. And this is the thing that eclipse chasers are really after. Look at the satellite image of the moon shadow actually racing across the Earth. This is from an eclipse from 2016. That's the real shadow of the Earth, of the moon, racing across the shadow of the Earth. Now that's taking place over the entire eclipse day. So this is very much in fast forward, but you can see if we stop it, that big black blotch right there is the real shot of the shadow of the moon from one of the satellites orbiting Earth. Now take a look at this animation of the shadow on the Earth for the eclipse in America this year. These are very, very technical and very sophisticated maps of the movement of the shadow of the moon across Earth that NASA has been making for just a short while. And these are very detailed maps, and they show very accurately the shape of the shadow on the Earth, and they tell you exactly where you would need to stand if you wanted to see a total eclipse of the sun. And on a map like this, with such tremendous detail, you can see exactly which cities, which towns are inside the path of the shadow. I'm just going to stop this here and show you. If you were to stand anywhere out here, you would not see a total eclipse. You would see a very deep partial eclipse, but the sun would still be visible and it would still be quite bright like daytime. The same on this side. You can't see a total eclipse from anywhere out here. You must stand inside the shadow of the moon, somewhere inside of this circle. So if you were to stand here in this city called Columbia, or in St. Matthews, in that town right there, anywhere in there, that's where the moon is completely blocking the sun. So it's very important that we understand, if we want to see a total eclipse, where it is that we need to stand. So for me, after all these years, I love filming the action of the shadow coming down onto Earth. It's one of the most exciting things that I could possibly film. This is from China in 2008. Watch the right-hand corner of the screen here as it gets darker and darker as the shadow of the moon moves this way. Watch the right-hand corner. Look at the darkening. There's the shadow. Here it comes. And now the total eclipse has begun. You've seen the shadow engulf our location. People get really excited during this part. This lasts maybe 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes, maybe 4 or 5 minutes if you're lucky. The duration of the eclipse is different every time. Now watch in the right corner of the screen again. Look, it's getting brighter here. That's the trailing edge of the moon's shadow coming to our location, and that will end the eclipse. Watch. Look at the shadow racing off towards the left. So in fast forward, idea of what it's like to see the shadow race into your location and then race away from you. Take a look at this animation again from NASA that shows how the shadow of the moon laid its path down onto the Earth in March 2015. Look at the long, thin, it's almost like a needle, the shadow of the moon. And when the alignment is perfect, the shadow falls onto the Earth. And again, this is what eclipse chasers are all excited about, is the fact that this long shadow actually lines up with the Earth and it crosses the surface of the Earth at a certain point. In March 2015, you can see the shadow of the moon went way up near the North Pole. Take a look at this animation. It shows you exactly where the shadow of the moon fell in March 2015. So here's the outer shadow where you can see the partial eclipse, and look, there's the total eclipse zone inside there. And if you notice, it's all over water. It's very difficult to chase an eclipse where the umbra is only visible over water. But this is very common since the planet is about 60 to 70% water. So what we did was get a plane from Europe and we flew up towards the North Pole where we knew the shadow of the moon would be able to catch us from behind. Look at this unique bit of film from flying at 35,000 feet in the air. Look at the darkness over here. The shadow of the moon has already touched down behind us, and look, the leading edge of the shadow is starting to appear here. Watch this as the shadow of the moon engulfs our plane. Now the shadow of the moon has engulfed our plane. You can see the circular shape of the shadow in the sky like this round shape. That's the shadow of the moon being projected off the moon and onto the Earth. And you see all this darkening on the Earth underneath. That's the shadow. So here it is in fast forward. The shadow is marching across the Earth. Our plane is flying in it. We get to stay in this tremendous view for only a couple of minutes. And then the eclipse comes to an end as the shadow of the moon races away. The shadow is moving between 2,000 and 3,000 miles an hour. So even in a plane, it's almost impossible to stay inside the shadow for very long. This is what eclipse chasers love, is getting to go all around the world to be there when it happens. So I want to show you, to give you a little bit of a sense of the what it's like to see a total eclipse. Now, it's very difficult because a film or a video or a photograph can't actually transmit an experience. If you want to understand how it feels to see a total eclipse, we really must be there ourselves. But here's a little section from a film that I just made with some very unusual shots of the shadow in motion. So let's watch this for a couple of minutes. Moving at over 2,000 miles an hour, the shadow has been creeping closer and closer to our location here. From the ground, the arrival of the moon's shadow is chilling. Watch this time lapse again. Keep your eye on the sun as it gets pinned by the moon. See the shadow advance across these clouds, then darken the horizon. The eclipse is a cosmic light switch. Daytime into night in a matter of seconds. On camera 4, you can see the leading edge of the moon's shadow in the sky. Total eclipse on this side, not quite yet over here. This eclipse delivered some of the most dramatic images of celestial mechanics I have ever seen. Camera 1 really pays off. Moving this way, the leading edge of the moon neatly tucks away the last sign of the sun in the spectacular diamond ring effect.
Oh my God! That's fantastic. Coming in at 8. Venus Yeah, Mercury, total eclipse of the sun.
The great coincidence is that the moon is exactly the right size.
Look at the beautiful sky. I know. Oh, this fantastic corona, asymmetrical.
I knew it at the time, too, that the filters I was using helped me get great detail in the middle corona here. And with the palm trees gently brushing up against the corona, I couldn't ask for more.
It's amazing. Oh my God, fantastic coronal streamers. Yeah. 1 at 3 o'clock is massive. I lost my words. Oh my God, it's fantastic corona. Look at the detail. I know, look at the detail. Oh my God. That one is like,
Even though this eclipse lasted over 3 minutes, it seems like only 10 seconds before the trailing edge of the shadow appears and brightens the sky again. Totality is over.
oh, it's starting to get hot on top. Yeah. Oh, there it is. There's a diamond ring. Oh my God, fastest 3 minutes ever. Fastest 3 minutes in the world. Oh, shadow going. Oh.
So it's very easy to see how excited you can get when you're seeing a total eclipse of the sun. And even though we have all of this tremendous science and the predictability of eclipses that allows us to know when they're going to happen, know exactly where we need to stand, it's one thing to understand all of that, and then it's another thing altogether to actually go and experience it yourself. And I think this is one of the fantastic things about exploring and about adventuring and getting out to understand our world, is being present yourself underneath the solar system and actually able to see the cosmos in its clockwork motion, create a total eclipse with your own eyes. Then you can really start to talk about what a tremendous event this really is. So I just want to show you, just before we finish, I want to show you what the eclipse glasses actually look like when we're talking about seeing the partial phases of the eclipse. We know that we need to protect our eyes, and it's very important. And then when the total eclipse happens, you can take your special glasses off, and it's totally safe to witness the eclipse with your naked eye during the total phase. So in America, here comes the shadow of the moon this year. And across the entire United States, from Oregon down to the South Carolina coast, there's the shadow of the moon. If you want to see this eclipse, you have to be somewhere along this line, where this little dot is going to be for about 2.5 minutes. And this is the chance of a lifetime. A total eclipse of the sun never comes this close, or rarely comes this close, to where so many North Americans are living. There's the close-up view as well. 12 states gets to see totality inside of this red line, and that's where we need to get to. I'll be over here in Wyoming. But it's important for everybody to find these solar eclipse glasses. They're going to be on sale everywhere throughout America in the coming weeks, and you use these for the partial phase of the eclipse. I'm using a welder's glass here, and you can see the shadow on my eyes because I'm watching the partial phase of the eclipse. But these glasses that these children are wearing here are what you need to get, and they look like this. And
you're not sharing your screen, sir.
David, yeah, David, sorry. Your screen isn't sharing right now. It cut out for a second.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, sorry.
It's telling me that I am sharing it.
That's odd.
Okay, so where did we end up with the glasses?
You were talking about the red line across the stage that we've seen, but there's the glasses. Now we can see them. That's perfect.
Oh, we see. Okay, so this is the important thing, is everybody needs to wear these cardboard style glasses, which allow you to watch the beginning phases of the eclipse and the ending phases of the eclipse when the sun is still visible. During the total eclipse, you can take these off and you can observe the eclipse with your naked eye. But prior to that, you're going to need these style of eclipse glasses. They're cardboard. They probably only cost $1 or $2, maybe $3. They should be on sale throughout America, or from special solar eclipse glasses retailers that you can find on my website. But these are very important. And it's also just as important to take them off when the total eclipse arrives. For that 2.5 minutes of darkness, you won't need these. Now, here's my website at eclipseguy.com if anybody wants more information. This Still Hooked is my new film that explains a lot of what you're going to see in America on August 21st. You need to convince your parents or your guardians or your brothers and sisters or your uncles and aunts to take you to the eclipse in August. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and my website at Eclipse Guy is full of information to help you decide where to go and how to observe this safely. So there's a few minutes on solar eclipses. I hope all that came through.
It was great. You got time for questions and answers with all the classes?
Oh, of course.
Perfect. All right. So let's begin. I want to mention too that there are 6 classes or groups watching on YouTube Live as well. So if you guys want to submit your questions in the little chat bar on the right, I can pass them along to David. But for the time being, let's start with Mrs. Rasiga's class. So if you guys have a question, come on up.
Where do you get your funds for traveling around the world?
My funds? I work in the film and television business, and I spend all of my own money doing this. Sometimes I'll get a job where somebody wants to see a film or a video, and I'll get a job to make a film or a video. I've been on some expeditions where I get paid to take photographs of the expedition and then produce a gallery afterwards. But because these expeditions are so far away, and they are, they happen relatively frequently. I'm traveling every year or two. Most of the time, I'm having to pay for these trips myself. And then if I can sell the films that I've made, so much the better. If I can sell some of the photographs, so much the better.
Excellent. All right, Mr. Pennington's class, if you guys have a question, come on up. And there we go.
She's coming.
What did you do to your ankle?
What do you think is the most important part of chasing eclipses?
Probably the most important part, well, I'd say there's 2 parts that are equally important. One is you have to protect your eyes. If you get sloppy on that, or you think it's okay to put 2 or 3 pairs of sunglasses and look at that way, no, it's no good. You can't play around with that. So the 2 most important things are, 1, protect your eyes with proper eclipse shades. And the other thing that's equally as important is experience the entire eclipse. Open your eyes and open your ears and see the environmental changes, see the wondrous spectacle in the sky, and take all of it in. I'll make this point again, that even though eclipses, you can explain them very easily with science. When you're standing there, the eclipse itself is not science. The eclipse is an experience. You can explain it with science, which is amazing. Without science, we wouldn't know where to stand. But the eclipse itself is not science. It's an experience. You feel it in your head. You feel it in your heart. You feel it throughout your entire body. So the 2 most important things are be open to that and protect your eyes.
Outstanding. And thank you for coming into the frame and taking so long to get that question out. That was wonderful. All right, Mrs. Hastings' Specs class, if you guys have a question, come on up. Yep.
Okay, go ahead. Was there ever a eclipse in Canada?
Yes, there were eclipses in Canada. Yes, but they were many decades ago. The next eclipse in Canada won't be until 2024. So who knows where we're all going to be in 2024. So the one in August this year is coming quite close for those of us who live in North America, which is why I highly recommend that if you're within a day or two's drive, that you come and see this one. But the next one coming to Canada will be along the East Coast, up through Quebec and out into the Maritimes in 2024.
Just out of curiosity, would the one that's happening in August be visible like partially, 50%, 70% from the Ontario classes?
Oh, absolutely, yes. The Ontario classes will experience a significantly deep partial eclipse on August 21st, and even more important then to go out and get eclipse shades or start building pinhole cameras or get a telescope and project the exit pupil onto a big sheet, and students can watch the eclipse progress that way without having to look towards the skies. There's 3 or 4 I think classes may be in on August 21st. I'm not sure the schedule with the schools in Ontario, but for most of Canada, a deep partial eclipse will be visible to all on August 21st.
Excellent. All right, Mr. Jancy's class, I don't have the ability to demute your mic, so if you want to come up and demute your own microphone, you can ask a question. Perfect.
Doing this?
Oh, could you repeat it?
What made you start doing this?
It was actually luck. In 1991, a long time ago, I went to Mexico to visit a friend of mine, and a total eclipse was going to be happening. And I knew that the total eclipse was going to be happening, but I wasn't really focused on it. I wanted to go visit with my friend. And then, of course, on the day when the eclipse came, we went somewhere really cool, and we stood there, and then I saw the shadow of the moon race over and engulf the sun. And it was the most incredible thing that I had ever seen. But more importantly, it was one of the most incredible things that I had ever felt or that I had ever experienced about this world. And it made me very excited. And just like a really great ride, I wanted to go back on and do it again and do it again because the experience was so great. So I became an eclipse chaser because I loved the feeling and I loved the experience of seeing a total eclipse. And that's why I'm out talking about it now.
Outstanding. All right, we have time for the whole round again. So, Mrs. Rasiga, if you guys have another question,
sure.
Come on.
Want to come closer?
Which was the most interesting eclipse so far?
That's a really hard question. You know why? Because every time you see an eclipse, the corona, the atmosphere of the sun, looks a little bit different. It's never the same twice, and you can never predict what it's going to look like. Now, having said that, I think when I went to Libya, which is in the Sahara Desert in northern Africa in 2006, it was a very unusual place to go. And the reason that I say that that was one of my favorite eclipses is that the weather conditions were absolutely perfect. By and large, the desert was really flat. It was very dry. There was hardly any clouds in the sky. And we were able to see the shadow of the moon approach us from many miles away. And then the total eclipse lasted over 4 minutes, which was a really long eclipse. And then we saw the shadow of the moon race away from us afterwards. I would say it was almost a perfect eclipse in Libya.
Cool. I was hoping we were going to get that question. All right, Mr. Pennington's class, if you guys have a second question, come on up.
Hello. Hello. My name is Henry. What do you find most interesting about your job?
That's a great question, Henry. I think it's the fact that my attention is on the bigger perspective all the time. I don't get too worried about what's going on down here on Earth. I mean, I have to pay my bills and I have to clean the dishes. But most of the time, my thoughts and what I'm noticing is what's going on in the solar system and that idea that we are a part of the solar system as well. And I think the more time that I spend seeing eclipses and watching the moon and seeing where the sun is and starting to anticipate these events and other astronomical events as well. I love meteors and I love seeing comets. I think the fact that it draws my attention to the solar system on a bigger scale is probably one of the things that I like the most.
Outstanding. All right, Mrs. Hastings Specs class, if you guys have a second question.
When it is cloudy. What happens if cloudy?
That's a great question. That is such a great question. So you know what happens? You don't see it. the clouds hide the eclipse. So this is what eclipse chasers never want to see is clouds when they go to see an eclipse. So we spend a lot of time and a lot of effort trying to get into a place where it's supposed to be clear. So if there's an eclipse path like there is through America, we will take a look at the climate, take a look at the weather studies, and we will choose a location that has the highest likelihood of sunny skies, and we'll try to downplay the chance of getting either rain or clouds. And even if clouds do come, it's very important to try to be mobile when you see the eclipse. So you can jump into your car or jump into your RV and get away from the clouds. Then you're really chasing an eclipse. But it's something that eclipse chasers have to deal with all the time, is trying to avoid clouds on the day of the eclipse.
Have you ever had a foreign trip where you're trying to see an eclipse blocked by clouds?
I've had, of these, all the total eclipses I've seen, I've only had 2 that had partial clouds. So I've never been completely clouded out, and I'm very lucky that I've never been completely clouded out. In Antarctica, we had partial thin clouds in front of the eclipse, which diminished the extent of the corona that we could see, but we still were able to see the eclipse. We saw some corona, it went dark, so we were able to count it as an eclipse that was observed, but the extent of the corona was diminished by the clouds.
All right, and then last but not least, Mr. Jancy's class, if you guys can demute your mic again, we'll do one last question.
All right, so background on our question, we're going to be in school on the 21st, and we'll get about a 75% one, I think. So Claire, go ahead.
What will a 75% solar eclipse look like?
Okay, great question. Let's see if I can actually find, you know, we saw it in one of those first animations. Let me pull this up on my screen, and then I'll try to share this. Just going to find the piece. Okay, can you guys see this?
Yep.
So let me see if I can find what a 70% eclipse would look like. So here's a 0% solar eclipse. That's about a 10% solar eclipse. That's about a 20% solar eclipse. That's about a 50% solar eclipse. So if you guys are going to be in, the sun is going to look like this. It's going to be largely hidden by the moon, and the sun will be reduced to a sliver like this that actually looks like the moon, but it'll be the sun. And that's what you'll see in the sky from your location on August 21st.
Very cool. All right, so guys, at the end of every hangout, what we do is I'm going to demute everyone's microphone, and if you could join me in saying a big thank you to David for joining us. So Mrs. Racina's class, Pennington, Hastings Spec, Jancy, if you guys want to say a big thank you with me to David. Thank you so much, David. Got some eclipse love. Awesome. All right. So thanks for joining us, guys, for the classes. We hope to have you exploring by the seat of your pants again soon. David, that was awesome. Thanks so much for being with us here today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Have a nice day.